Welcome, everybody, to the January 2nd, 2024 Finance Committee meeting. Happy New Year. We're very happy to have Dr. Aldridge back after her shoulder surgery. So welcome back, Dr. Aldridge.
Thank you.
Some housekeeping items, please. If you have a cell phone, please make sure it's on mute or vibrate. Those here for public comment, approach the podium when I give the opportunity to do so. And with that, I'll have Jen read the first item on our agenda today.
Number 12, ordinance third reading, amending ordinance number 4520, defining the terms and conditions of employment for sworn officers of the Cheyenne Police Department for fiscal year 2023 to 2024.
Staff report. Welcome, Chief.
It's not on.
Person.
Yeah,
There
there,
we
the
go.
light's on.
My apologies.
It's
Mark
like
Francis.
Patrick Mahomes trying to find a receiver right now. Go ahead, Chief, sorry. Please don't give me a ticket after the meeting. Sorry.
I can't really argue with it. He finds them, they just drop it. Mark Francisco, Chief of Police, Cheyenne Police Department. This is just an update of the terms and conditions to capture the 3% cost of living raise that is going into effect. And it also, the one other change allows us to hire laterals at the ultimate lateral pay that they would have. In previous versions, it had us hiring them at the starting pay for police officer and then upgrading them after 6 months. As everybody knows, it's a pretty competitive job market for police officers. So my inclination would be to hire them at the lateral pay that they will ultimately be getting. And that is also subject to the chief's approval. Should their training and so forth, wherever they come from, not really warrant that lateral pay, then we have a way to deal with that as well. Let's stand for any questions.
Thanks, Chief. Stand by. Questions for the chief? Mr. Roybal.
Mr. Chair, through you, the current pay system that we have, and if this is updating, do you think that's cured the compression levels that we experienced in the past?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, the compression that we see right now in our pay scale is at the between sergeant and lieutenant, and that's a result of last year's cost of living, which was a two-tiered, I think it was last year, a two-tiered cost of living, where those at a certain rank got a less percentage than those at a lower rank. And so that started a compression issue. It's not horrible yet, but one more of those and it will be bad. So I think we're going to try and request that be dealt with in next year's budget to expand those ranks out a little bit so we don't have a compression issue.
Dr. Aldridge.
Yes, sir. Through you, Chairman White. I know that this ordinance is really dealing with the pay scale. But as I was reading through this, it did come up on a couple of questions and was able to have one of them answered before we started about the sick bank policy that's being used by the police department, that is something that's across our city employees. All of our city employees have access to a sick bank. But in your under number 4, sick leave, on page 2, it talks about that officers who have not accumulated 480 hours at the beginning of the calendar year will be entitled to 24 hours of goodie time each year, provided they use not more than 40 hours of sick leave during each calendar year. And it goes on to explain that. My understanding was that we had put in a grandfathering date for goodie time 2 or 3 years ago. And I don't see that reflected in this policy. And so I'm just wondering, is everyone eligible for goodie time, or are you following the city policy out of the employee handbook that only those that were hired prior to a certain date are eligible for goodie time?
I don't think I know the answer to that. I suspect ours is different. The law enforcement contractual one might be different than because I know our non-sworn employees are different in some ways than the law enforcement. So if what's in the contract is different, I would suspect they're treated differently.
Okay.
I think Stephanie might be able to provide
Thanks.
some clarification for you, Dr. Aldridge, if you want to go that route. Stephanie, go ahead.
Sure. Stephanie Boster, Cheyenne City Attorney, through you. Chairman to Councilman Aldrich. Just wanted to clarify that the rules and regulations for city employees are not applicable to law enforcement and fire. So the chief is correct. Whatever is stated in this policy applies only to police.
My understanding is that we did eliminate goodie time for fire department employees in a previous contract. Is he shaking his head? Yes, I can't see him.
I would say no.
Do
He's
we
shaking
have
his head
goodie
no.
time for firemen still? We don't have goodie time for firemen. So only police officers in the city of Cheyenne get goodie time out of all the city employees and all of the sworn officers. Is that what I'm hearing? That's problematic, I think.
Robin,
Rob
go
Lapkus.
ahead.
So back in 2015, we updated the personnel policies and procedures to grandfather anybody that's an employee in that was started out before 2015. So for instance, like Chris Jones still gets goodie time and I do not.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, and I know that this ordinance is to deal with the wage issues and the hiring issues for lateral hiring. But I'm just wondering if that might be something we need to clean up while we're doing this ordinance change. And at least put in there something about for officers that were hired prior to that 2015 deadline. I just think that we're looking at an equity issue when we have one department and only the law enforcement side of that department that gets goodie time out of all the city employees and all the fire and all the folks we have citywide.
Well, I bet the officers would trade their goodie time to have equity with the fire contract if we're
Yeah.
looking at all that stuff.
Well,
My point being that it's not the only inequity that exists.
right. Right. I would just suggest that we may want to take a look at moving towards at least including the verbiage about the grandfathering in of individuals who began before 2015 and maybe not be hiring people in under with the auspices that they're going to get goodie time going forward. I just think that that is an equity that we can address. And so something that I would hope that the police department would consider before the budgets come through.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Dr. Aldridge. Any other questions for the chief? Hearing none. Comments from the public? Hearing none. Do I have a motion from the committee?
I would so move.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none. All those in favor of this ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 22, resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a settlement agreement with Rodney and Joyce Stone and Dean and Jane Furtick to resolve a lawsuit regarding increased flooding following the development of the Thomas Heights subdivision.
Staff report, please.
Stephanie Boster, Cheyenne City Attorney. What you have before you is a resolution which will allow the mayor to resolve the Thomas Heights litigation. As you know, in the past, we've been in settlement negotiations with Stone Furtick, and we have reached an agreement. So what this will do is allow the mayor to sign this settlement agreement. I don't currently have the settlement agreement in front of you, but I wanted to outline the terms of it. The city of Cheyenne will not be paying any money to Stone Furtick under this agreement. Instead, the city is going to agree to a timeline to essentially fix the drainage issues in the area. And the timeline has been identified by the city engineer, and that will be part of the terms and conditions of the settlement agreement. The Stone Furtick has also settled with the other defendant in the case, which is the Homeowners Association for Thomas Heights. The terms of that settlement agreement are confidential and we don't know. We do know that they're getting a small amount of money, but the city's agreement with Stone Furtick will be that we won't pay any money and we will move forward with fixing the issue, which we intended to do prior to the litigation. With that, I'm available for any questions.
It's good news, Stephanie. Thank you. Questions?
Just comment.
Dr. Aldrich?
Chairman White, through you, I just wanted to say I really appreciate, this has been an ongoing issue for many, many years. And I know it's taken a lot of work by our city engineer, Tom Cobb, and by the mayor and by Gene McDonald and everybody involved. And I did think that while this may not be an issue that we felt we were liable to fix, I think it's a good faith statement to have this come before us today. So thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Escabel.
Yeah, through you, city attorney, would it give us any flexibility at all on the timeline for any unforeseen circumstances?
Mr. Chairman, through you to Councilman Escabel, not really, no. We've committed to a certain timeline, and if we don't complete the terms of that timeline, essentially the stone verdicts could come against us for violating that settlement agreement. And I should have a draft to you before the city council meeting. I don't have it now, but Mr. Cobb is the one who has outlined that timeline, and I would defer to him.
Mr. Cobb?
Good morning, I think what timeline I'm on, to everyone.
No one
Mr. White.
knows. It's 2024. Nobody
Okay,
knows yet. So
okay.
go ahead.
Well, I'm just be a little patient with me. I'm thinking I'm getting my brain back into this. I've been gone for a couple of weeks, but through you, Mr. White, to Councilman Escabel, the answer is we've allowed flexibility in on the items that we cannot control. We've allowed that flexibility into the schedule. So there are things that are written in like such, if things out of our control that we can't, are going to modify the schedule. So he did allow some flexibility to be placed in it.
Okay, if there are no other questions, comments from the public? Hearing none, do I have a motion from the committee?
I would so move.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of this resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No one's opposed. That item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 24C, contract modification number 1 to contract number 7782 between the City of Cheyenne and DHM Design Corporation for utility locating services for the Reed Avenue Rail Corridor Design Project from 2017 Specific Purpose Option Tax Fund.
Staff report.
Good afternoon, West Bay Stormwater Division. Before you is a contract modification for utility locating services for the Reed Avenue Corridor Design Project. The original contract assumed that local utility locating companies would be used, but they do not work in railroad right of way, and they lack the expertise for the signal equipment in the railroad right of way. So the consultant had to go out and hire, is going to need to go out and hire a utility locating company that specializes in railroad right of way. The total modification amount is $39,640, bringing it to a new contract amount of $1,320,919.20. I can stand for any questions.
Thanks, Wes. Questions for Mr. Bay?
Just a comment.
Go ahead, Dr. Aldridge.
Chairman White, through you. I just wanted to say this has been quite a learning ordeal. Who knew that, you know, the 811 number or whatever couldn't do railroad, railway right of ways. So it was extremely interesting reading and appreciate all your hard work to make sure that this happens and keeps moving forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Escabel.
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, Wes, was it mostly the crossings? Because we didn't have above ground signals on Reed Avenue.
Through you, Mr. Chair. It's the entire corridor. It's for the crossings mainly, but 811 will not work in the railroad right away. So
Understand?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, comments from the public. Do I have a motion from the committee?
I would move to approve an amount not to exceed $39,640.
It's been moved and seconded. Comments from the committee? Hearing none, all those in favor of this contract modification, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No one's opposed. That item moves forward. Next item, please.
Number 26A, request to extend the time period in which Wyoming Horse Racing LLC, doing business as Horse Palace, has to become operational for an additional year for their retail license located at 5640 High Plains Road, Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Staff report.
Mr. Chair, Chris Jones, City Clerk. Excuse me, we received a letter that The Wyoming Horse Racing doing business as Horse Palace has requested another year extension for their park status on their retail liquor license. There is a representative here today if you had any specific questions on a timeline for him. Otherwise, I'd stand for any other questions.
Questions for Chris or the representative? I saw Mr. Roybal first and we'll go to Dr. Og.
Mr. Chair, Chris, when was the original, when did we issue that license originally?
Unfortunately, I don't have that with me, but I can get that to you following the meeting.
But and we renew them in June, right?
No, we were effective April 1. Right now, we're going through the renewal process right now. That's for the reason for the request.
Okay.
Actually, if I remember correctly, their 1-year park status would be due in February, so we need to sew this up prior to the renewal timeframe.
And if I could ask a couple of questions of the representative from Horse Palace?
Steve Jimenez, General Manager, Wyoming Horse Racing.
Okay, first is which machine's winning this week?
No, you're gonna have to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
And I've been by your where they're building and those guys are going at it like elves on shoes. So when's your ETA for opening?
So we are now officially enclosed, so we could start working on it. I mean, obviously through the weather, you know, the snowstorms and the rain and stuff, but we're forecasting to be open mid second quarter, mid to late. So figure, you know, April, May.
Okay.
You know, maybe June-ish, but I mean, we're hoping obviously sooner than later.
Yeah.
You know, but
Okay,
that's
but
kind
a
of
year-
what our tentative agreement is. Our tentative schedule is right now. So,
A year would give you.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
yeah,
you need.
we'll be well within that boundary.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Dr. Aldrich?
So I have a couple of questions. One, I guess Chairman White, through you, if I remember this scenario correctly, this license was held by Poor Richards, the Rouseys, and they had parked it for a year. And then they had talked about parking it for another year, and that was not something the council was willing to do. But at that time, they found a buyer. And so it was sold at that point to Wyoming Horse Racing. And it was parked with the understanding that this facility was going to be built. And so it's been being held for it'll be a year, I believe, in February, you said?
Mr. Chair, through you to Dr. Eldridge, this particular one, yes, correct.
And so my understanding is there is a 2-year limitation on how long licenses can be parked.
That is correct.
So
Well, let me clarify that, excuse me, if you don't mind. Since we have a transfer of ownership,
It
that
starts-
changes. It's 2 years per owner. So
it started the
even
clock
though
again.
it was parked for the previous owner for a year, that doesn't come into account with the new owner. They still
Right.
have an opportunity for 2 years.
Right. So I guess my question is, and we've done this on other licenses where we've said it needs to be effectuated by a certain date. I'm just wondering, and I understand we've definitely had some weather and issues that have held this up. Are we able to grant this with a caveat or an understanding that it has to be in play by June 30th or by July 1st, so that we don't, quite honestly, every day that a liquor license sits in our community unused, it's costing us sales tax revenue. And so is there a way to make sure that this actually is going to get utilized so that we can be the best stewards of these licenses that we can be?
Mr. Chair, through you, it would be my initial understanding that you could put a condition on the park status request to say open by July or September, or whatever governing body may choose, but I would request a little bit of time to look into that to make sure I'm not misspeaking on that, but I do believe that conditions are possible. City attorney is shaking her head yes on licenses. However, this is a park status, so I would just request that Stephanie and I have a little time to make sure that that applies.
Chairman White, through you. So in order to give you and the city attorney's office plenty of time to look at that, please know that my intention on Monday will be to add that condition as of July 1st, if you can look into that and make sure that we can make that happen. I think that will give plenty of time for the facility to get enclosed. It's enclosed now, get the interior done and get that license operating so that we can begin generating some sales tax revenue.
Mr. Chair, through you, Attorney Boster and I will get together and respond, definitely on the condition portion of it. And we'll move forward from there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ballster too.
We'll go Mr. Royball and then we'll go Mr. Escabel.
And Ms. Jones, I applaud you guys doing the research, but I would speak against that in this particular instance in that we granted them the license or they bought the license. We granted it to them. And now they're coming in and we gave them all the A, B, and Cs that they had to do to make sure this license goes through, including the renewal. Yeah, I think it would be remiss on us to go ahead and then start putting caveats on it after that. Maybe going forward, if we're going to, somebody says, yeah, we'll be open in 6 months and we're buying a license and we know that, then we can put the caveat on there. Because again, they're going from ground up. You never know what'll happen. If the thing accidentally burns down or something in the middle of construction, well, sorry, you don't get a license either. Have a nice day.
Blows down.
Close down, yeah. So there's, like I say, if we're gonna do it, I don't mind doing it. I just, on somebody that, the next one that comes up, if we wanna say, okay, you get 6 months or you get 8 months, is that's what.
Mr. Chair, through you, I feel that my job is to advise you is what, what legally we can do with the licenses, condition, not condition. As far as, putting a condition on this one, I will refrain from offering an opinion.
Mr. Escabel, you had a comment.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, through you, just let us know as you're doing the research if we have ever done that before. Besides the new ones that we gave, because I know like with the rail spur, we told them they had to be open by the end of last year. So, but that was a new license, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, putting a condition on a request for an extension of a park, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Jimenez.
Yeah, I mean, I would respectfully request that we don't have a condition just because, I mean, obviously every day we're not open, we're losing revenue ourselves. So I just want to be able, I mean, we've had setbacks from, from materials to weather to, so I'm just trying to make sure that all of a sudden something like the elevator shaft doesn't come in on time or whatever it is. There's things inside that have to, we have to order that take time. So we're just trying to, if there's a delay for some reason that's out of our hands, we just want to be able to make sure we, hit the goals. I mean, for every day we're closed, we're losing revenue too. So we want to be open as soon as possible. Trust me. We were actually hoping to be open by February this year, but because of the weather, we're not open at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there any comments from the public? Do I have a motion from the committee?
I had moved to approve.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any further comments from the committee? Dr. Aldrich? Nope. Okay. If there are no further comments, all those in favor of this request to extend the time period, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No one's opposed. That item moves forward. There are no other items on our agenda. Hope everybody has a great day. And at our next finance committee meeting, we will have a new chairwoman and some new committee members. That's correct. So take care. Have a great week.